Such a pity we don't have the voice function, since this is just a webinar, but you can still interact with me. You have the chat box down at the bottom, then we have the Q&A part. So definitely feel free to ask any questions or share your thoughts in the chat box. So we'll wait just maybe 1 or 2 minutes for the other colleagues to come. Well, it's nice. I can see so many recognizable names. So I see, hello, Alshra, Edgars, Ashley, Arthur, Malcolm, so many different countries. I think the last time I counted, we had participants from, I think something like 4 dozen different countries. So this is very international. Okay, while we just wait for the others to join, I'll find the presentation for today. And we have a very, very, very interesting topic. I think you're going to like this. In fact, I think let's just basically start, okay? So in the first 4 lectures, which we had last month in November, we covered the topic of new client hunting. And so new client hunting, whenever I train partners and law firms, new client hunting is basically an introduction to legal business development. We catch the idea that sales and marketing are not the same thing, and that I'm very much biased towards sales. So my priority is to help you to proactively generate revenues, to get a return on investment from putting in your time to do the different business development activities. And then after I cover new client hunting, once we've done that basic kind of introduction, then there are another, I've written 20, I think 25 textbooks, little study topics in legal sales and marketing. So there's a lot of different things that we can look at. And very often the next topic, which we do, is what I call sales writing. And that's what we're going to be starting with today. And that's what we're going to cover in the next 4 lectures in December. Sales writing is absolutely fantastic. This is a wonderful topic. You're going to like this. Why? What's good about sales writing? Well, to be honest, guys, the things which we can do in business development, usually they are out of the comfort zone of the lawyers. You know, there are things like networking and telephoning people and public speaking and presentations and all of that kind of stuff. And that can be scary and uncomfortable. The good news is sales writing isn't. You're a lawyer. You've done writing, you do writing every day. You studied years of writing. The problem is you've studied years of legal writing. And what I noticed first in Russia and then in the other European countries and globally is very few lawyers have studied sales writing. How can you write in order to persuade somebody? Yeah. How can you write in order to get a meeting? How can you write in order to sell a suggested legal service? And it's not as obvious as we think. The typical mistakes, there's lots of typical mistakes that lawyers make when they try and do something like sales writing. They end up writing far too much, making it too legalistic, too complicated, not having a call to action, not having legal products, not doing follow-up. So there's plenty of ways that we can do this wrong. And that's why I would predict, I can tell you a very sad fact, it is entirely possible for you to spend a ton of time, to spend many, many, many hours writing an article, doing something for LinkedIn, doing a newsletter, preparing a good email pitch, and nothing happens. You can waste your time. You know, yes, we can legitimize it and we can justify it and we can say, yeah, cool, that's awesome for our publicity and our brand. Well, I don't care about your publicity and your brand. I care about your pipeline of billable hours. I want you to generate revenues. I think your publicity and your brand is probably fine as it is. And we have wonderful marketing colleagues who can help us with our publicity and brand. So that's basically a little introduction to sales writing. So I'll try and share my screen and find the presentation, if we can find it. 1 second. Okay. So just bear with me 1 minute. I have a very messy desktop. So this is chat lecture 5, and I share the slides. We have, so there are 2 versions of the presentation. There's the version which I'm going to show you today, which I show you just now, and that's just with the pictures. That's the pictogram version of the presentation. If you want, you can email me and I can send you the version which has the text slides in it as well. So let me see if this works. Here we go. All right. So hopefully, hopefully you can see my screen now. Yeah, I'm screen sharing. All right. So for the next 25 minutes, I'll cover the 16 key concepts of sales writing part 1. And then for the second half, we have the Q&A part. All right. So we know what the early morning show is. And there are different ways you can use the early morning show. The main thing is to turn up to watch it. Okay. So today, like always, we have the 16 key topics that we're going to see. If we have some of my students, if we have some lawyers who studied with me before the topic of sales writing, don't be disappointed. The cool thing is at least half of this content is new that I wrote basically this year. So these are the 16 key concepts, the 16 key ideas. Actually, by the way, guys, a really cool thing to do after each of these lectures, if you want, or if you have a team of lawyers, you can simply show the slides with a pictogram and ask, what does that mean? And if a person can tell you what it means, they caught the idea. And if they can't, they didn't. So each of the 16 key concepts are covered in one lecture. So today we're going to look at a very useful structure in sales writing called AIDA. I think that's maybe one of the key ideas we're going to look at today. We're going to look at some of the basic common mistakes and how to avoid them. So I mentioned the 1 ruble rule and the Tolstoy mistake about writing too much. I tell you about spoilers, where you're telling too much, you're giving free legal advisory. This is another mistake. You have to replace your spoilers with teasers. I tell you about the magnifying lens. You should have one concept, one key idea in your sales writing that you're pitching. Don't start getting confused and diluting it with all sorts of other messages. We're going to look at, we're going to touch on mail shot as well. Your sales writing doesn't have to be in electronic form. This isn't very common, but you can do physical sales writing. You can send people actual letters, very 20th century, and you can even do a thing called lumpy mail shot, where you're sending people not just a letter, but a thing, a parcel, a book, a CD, whatever. So these are the concepts which we're going to cover today. I think the first thing that I'd like to look at, and this touches upon sales writing, is I call this concept the fat cat. And what is a fat cat? Hopefully you are not a fat cat. A fat cat is a lawyer or a partner who has so much work. They have a nice pipeline. Maybe they don't care where that work is coming from, but they're very, very busy and they have a nice pipeline. And what happens with a fat cat? Fat cat doesn't chase any mice. It's entirely possible to be a very busy lawyer, generating quite good revenues indeed, and to be doing no business development, which means you're not impacting or influencing not only the pipeline of the work that's coming to you, but also the type of work that's coming to you. So I think, even if you are very busy, you need to be remembering, where are you going? What's the direction you want to be going in? You mustn't just be a fat cat. The fat cat catches no mice. You need to, if you're very busy, I would ask you how much of your work is premium work rather than commodity. If it's commodity, you can delegate it to the youngsters, and then you should be chasing more premium work. And I would ask you, you know, how much of the work that you're doing is in the industry or sector that you would like to be focused on. You know, if you're not doing business development, you're going to get all sorts of random stuff, lots from different industries. So one way to get around this is with writing. You can sit safely behind your computer. You can send off email pitches proactively to targets. You choose the industry, you choose the key decision maker. You can do your articles to put that on social media, on the website, and publications. You mustn't be a fat cat. You choose which area, which industry, what type of work, even what type of legal product you would like to do, you would like to develop. And this can be fun. You have control over it. So don't be a fat cat. And a problem with fat cats is, I noticed, and I think this is quite a European thing, though I suspect, though I'm sure it happens in other countries as well, regarding business development, there is a kind of forbidden question. Let's imagine you have written a very interesting article. There was some kind of change in the legislation in your country. You wrote an article about it. You spent a few hours on that article. Good for you. You put it into a publication. It was physically printed even. You put it on the website. And what? I would ask you the forbidden question, how much did that generate? Show me the money. How much did that generate? What's the result? And I think the European lawyers are kind of shy and kind of polite. Nobody wants to answer that question or even to ask that question. This forbidden question, it applies to any and all of your business development activities. You went to a networking event. You were there for 3 days. You got lots of business cards. Okay. A month later, I would ask you, how much did that generate? And if you can't answer that, I predict you didn't generate anything at all. So at least if you're not being asked that question, that's okay. But you should ask yourself that question for any of your activities that you do in business development. How much did that finally generate? We've seen before that that's not the only and the main metric that we should be checking. We should be looking first at how many meetings do you get, of course. Proactive meetings are key. And then the meetings lead to mandates and lead to money, hopefully. So you need to measure your targets. Let's imagine you're going to do an article. It doesn't matter for me, it doesn't matter for anyone, I think, how many hours you spend doing that. So if you're simply recording in your timesheet that you spent 5 hours making an article, I don't think that's very important. You need to look at the return on investment targets. How are you going to measure the success of that article? Of course, my main one would be, how many meetings does it get you? You're going to write an article about a change to the law in a certain, that's going to impact a certain industry. Send that article to people in the industry and use that article as the bait to get you meetings. So your return on investment could simply be the meetings. Maybe you're going to put the article onto LinkedIn, and then you could have return on investment in terms of exposure. So let's imagine you have systematically connected with 100 CEOs and general directors and founders in a specific industry in your country. That would be a smart thing to do. And then you write an article on some legal product for that industry and you publish it on LinkedIn. If you want to be really cheeky, maybe you would even send it to some of these guys in a direct message. Another one of your return on investment targets could be, how many likes do you get? How many views do you get? How many comments do you get? Again, most of these metrics, I don't care. I don't think they're that important. I think the main metric is going to be the meetings, and then how many mandates, then how much money comes from it. So at least whatever you're doing in business development, especially in sales writing, have the metric of success, like your return on investment targets. And when you're doing a writing, let's say you're doing an email, not just an article, you're emailing a current client. In sales writing, you want to persuade them. Let's say you want to persuade them to meet one of your colleagues. You're cross-selling. That should be your only message. The magnifying lens, don't dilute your sales writing by having lots of different messages and ideas. I make this mistake a lot myself, because I get too many ideas, too excited. Keep your writing simple. in terms of the language. It has to be understood by the non-specialist. You mustn't be using legalisms, Latinisms, archaisms. You mustn't sound like a lawyer. The best lawyer doesn't sound like a lawyer, especially in sales writing. I think the only exception to that would be if you're writing for a legal audience and you want to impress them, then you can get away with sounding a little bit legalistic. But for the common businessman in sales writing, your objective here is not to inform. It's not to help society. It's not pro bono, and it's not a charity. Your objective is to get meetings and mandates and money, very pragmatically. So keep it to one idea. Don't overcomplicate things. And again, my big prediction that what I see in all of the different countries, I see this in legal writing as well, not just sales writing. Actually, I've written a couple of books on, on legal writing too, like the grammar and everything. I call it the Tolstoy mistake. Nobody wants to read Wojna i mir, War and Peace. You know, you don't need to make an article which is 20 pages, 5 pages, or a newsletter which is 3 pages. Keep it short and simple. Avoid the Tolstoy mistake. You don't need to write like Tolstoy, and your sentences should be short too. So 1 page is more than enough. Actually, if we're talking about an article, 1 page or half a page is more than enough. And put in some graphics, make it pleasing on the eye. Think of it like a newspaper or a magazine article. Don't do this horrible chunk of text, simply. And if you're doing an email, not only should you avoid the Tolstoy mistake, but the best email is a micro email. You know, 3, 4, 5 sentences, that's it. You don't need to have this big informational email. So the best sales writing, like the best legal writing, is short. The Americans actually did some research into this, because the Americans, of course, they've got lots of sales research and sales experts. And they found, in terms of email pitching, the shorter your email, the quicker the response. The shorter your email, the more positive responses. The shorter the email, the better the overall understanding of what your message is about in your campaign. So don't make the Tolstoy mistake. You will make the Tolstoy mistake in your own language as well. You don't have to do this mistake just in English. If you speak another language, same thing, keep it nice and short. Because everything that you're putting in your sales writing, even in an email, even in an article, we need to ask ishto, so what? Why is it there? If it shouldn't be there, or you can't justify it being there, get rid of it. So this is very important. Avoid the Tolstoy mistake. Ask, so what? This actually applies also for PowerPoint presentations. Generally, lawyers and partners in law firms, they do this quite wrong, making it far too long and complicated. I call it death by PowerPoint. You know, when you have 40 or 50 PowerPoint slides, too much text, and after the 3rd or the 4th slide, you just don't want to die. So the so what test, keep it very, very, very pragmatic. And you can apply the 1 ruble rule. The first version of your email or your article that you write, for each word, you have to pay 1 ruble. And then your task is to get that text and cut it 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 to make it as concise as possible. That's the 1 ruble rule. We can change the currency. You can call it the £1 rule. You know, I'm coming from Scotland, okay. But you get the idea. Avoid the Tolstoy mistake, apply the ishto, the so what test, apply the 1 ruble rule. The more concise you're writing, the better. And again, this sounds like such a weird idea. I already mentioned, you're writing, you don't need to limit yourself to emails and articles and newsletters and LinkedIn. You can actually send physical letters. Now, the cool thing about sending a physical letter to your current clients or potential clients is that it's extremely unusual. And the reception rate is about 100%, which isn't true for email pitching. The open rate is almost 100%. Again, a lot of unsolicited email gets dumped to spam, and the response rate is higher too. Of course, a mail shot costs more money, but the money is nothing, you know, for legal practice, it's nothing. How much would it cost to send 100 physical letters inviting potential clients, let's say to some business breakfast at your law firm? So you have nicely branded paper, signed, some personalization, addressed exactly to concrete people in a nice envelope. You could even put a little physical invitation, you know, like people still do this, I think, for weddings, don't they? And you send that off. Your response rate from a physical invitation, a mail shot, will be much higher than email pitching. So you can do this. I advised, I wonder if he's here actually, because I can't see. Okay. So I advised one managing partner in Slovakia about doing a mail shot campaign, and we identified the targets, we found the addresses, and we sent off, I think it was only 2 or 3 dozen letters in Bratislava, and we got some meetings, and they're still working with one of these clients to this day. This was before the pandemic. So fantastic return on investment. So you could think about doing a mail shot campaign. Lumpy mail shot means your mail shot might be, you're sending a book that you've written. So one of my, I shouldn't mention him by name because I didn't ask permission, but I have a really nice managing partner that I've been acquainted with for years in Lithuania. And this managing partner, he wrote a book, and maybe some of you have written books as well. And then the next question is, what do you do with the book? Well, I was saying, well, you can do a lumpy mail shot campaign, send it to some of the targets, use that as an invitation to get a lunch or a coffee with them. And people will appreciate receiving a book. They might not read the whole thing, but they're going to like it, you know. And be careful to avoid in your writing spoilers and teasers. A spoiler is when you're putting all of your cards on the table as a lawyer. You're telling them the answer. A lot of law firms do this with their newsletters. They say, hey, this kind of law has changed, this is the problem, and this is the solution. And then they spam these newsletters out to the target audience. You can tell I do not like newsletters. And in-house counsel love it. In-house counsel are very appreciative because it's full of spoilers and it makes life easier for in-house counsel. That's very generous of you, but it's not very good for your bottom line. Don't do that. Do teasers. A teaser is when you say, this is a problem and we have the solution, let's talk, you know? And you need to be careful because some of your clients, some in-house counsel and some of your commercial clients are phishing. They're trying to get free legal advisory. And sometimes partners, even managing partners, we want to show that we're clever and smart and we know this stuff because you are clever and smart and you do know this stuff. And so you tell them, you know, and they're very impressed and they don't pay you. So avoid spoilers, put in some teasers. You know, if I was you and if you were going to do a presentation, I would suggest that in a presentation, you know, for a potential client or a current client, don't do informational presentation. Don't just do informational slides. Don't do informational writing. Throw in a few products, some things that we can offer them that they could buy. Throw in some teasers as well, you know, to provoke their interest, to engage them in that one-to-one conversation. Don't do a huge presentation, which is basically a spoiler. This can even result in a thing, guys, which is called cannibalization. The sales that you would have got, you're not going to get them because you already satisfied their needs with your very generous free advisory. So be careful of spoilers and teasers. Now, probably the most useful concept for today is called AIDA. So again, I must apologize if we have some of my students who already know this. If you are one of my students who already knows this, let me throw a challenge to you. Send me an example AIDA email and I'll edit it and mark it and I'll reply to you because I think you can still make quite a lot of mistakes in this, even if you've studied it before. So an AIDA is a structure of writing. I think it's the main structure that I use in sales writing. You can use AIDA for an article, or you can use it for an email or a mail shot. Let's talk about this from the perspective of an email. So first of all, you have the salutation. Dear James. Then the first sentence will be the action. And the first sentence will be the awareness. Dear James, from 1st of January 2023, such and such a law is changing in our country. Now I'm aware of what you're talking about. I think to myself, Isto, so what? Make me interested. This is important for your company, James, because non-compliance will see you potentially having a fine of 10,000 euros. So you make me aware, then you make me interested. Why this applies to me? Is there an opportunity or a threat because of this change? Next sentence is desire. Offer me something. For this reason, James, I would suggest that we do a quick check of your documents to see if there is any risk here. And this quick check would take no more than a couple of hours. Okay, so now there's something I can desire. I can say yes or no to a 2-hour quick check. And then the most important part, action. So how about we do coffee on Tuesday at 5 o'clock? What do you think? Question mark and your name. That's an example of an AIDA. The AIDA goes hand in hand with the iceberg model of needs. You remember that the needs of the client are an iceberg, and it's only the tip of the iceberg, the explicit needs that they know and they're telling you about. In this case, there is an unknown unknown at the bottom of the iceberg of needs. So we need to make them aware, then we raise them to make them interested, then we raise them to make them desire something, and then we raise them above the surface of the water and tell them what to do. So that's the idea behind the AIDA. You make someone realize there is something, that they should care about it, you have a solution, and then you tell them what to do. Mostly lawyers don't do this because lawyers have usually never studied sales writing. What lawyers would do would just be awareness, an entire email of awareness. Dear James, from 1st of January, such and such a law changes, blah, 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 with best regards. Okay, so you've made me aware. I'm not interested in it. I don't see how that applies to me. You've not offered me anything to buy, and I'm just going to ignore you. So that's bad from a sales writing perspective. Sometimes lawyers would make people aware, and then they make them interested, and then they stop. They have no solution. They're not offering a product, and there's no call to action. You're going to do this properly to make money, to monetize your email, to monetize your pitch. You need all 4 steps: awareness and interest, critically the product, the desire, make them desire something that you offer. And then also critically get them to do something next. Your CTA, call to action, your action is probably going to be a face-to-face meeting, or at least a 30-minute meeting on Teams. Maybe it would be that they just send you the contract, they send you something, or that they meet someone. Drive the process, tell them what to do. So that's AIDA. You could do an entire article in AIDA format. You could have first paragraph awareness, second paragraph interest, third paragraph desire, fourth paragraph action. And then if you're going to do an article in the AIDA format, don't just spam everybody this on a newsletter. Make it into a personalized email, probably better than an article. If you're going to do an article, at least send that article to current clients, to ex-clients, to potential clients with a personalized message. Use your writing to get the meetings, yeah? In the salutation, be sure to always, one of the reasons I don't like newsletters is because newsletters very often are spam. Newsletters often just get deleted. Newsletters are often just informational and boring and dry and without products and with no call to action. If I get a newsletter from any law firm, it's very rare that I would even open it. I delete it. I always read my emails though. If I read something which is coming from a concrete person, I'll read it and I probably would even answer it. So you need to always have personalization for sales writing. And you begin with a salutation. Dear John, or if we're more formal, dear Mr. McVeigh. If we're more friendly, hi John. Never, 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 never copy what some of the American lawyers do, which is simply John, comma. That's far too direct. This can be rude for some nationalities. So yeah, you always need to have a salutation at the start of the email. And you follow the mirror rule of formality, that if the client is writing to you, dear surname, you respond, dear surname. If they go down to dear name, you go to dear name. Hi, your name, then you can go hi, their name. But you never follow the mirror rule down to just doing the name itself. And never, never, never write dear all. Dear all is really rubbish, terrible, awful. Don't address people as dear all. They're not dear all. They're not an uncountable mass. You can say dear colleagues. And colleague doesn't mean what many people think it means. It just means counterparts. So if I write to a group of lawyers, a group of engineers, a group of students, a group of anyone, dear colleagues is fine. If it's very formal, you might say dear sirs, and dear sirs includes women. Yeah. If you're interested in a lot of the technicalities of letter writing, you can email me. I can send you a paper. I can send you a book about this. Even in the salutations, be careful. So, dear Mr., my name is McVeigh. If you're writing to a woman, dear Ms. McVeigh, you never write Miss or Mrs. in 21st century legal writing. These are archaisms. And there's a third one. I'm not saying that you should use this, but I want you to know that it exists. It's pronounced mix. And this is in the same way that if you're writing to a woman, now it doesn't matter if it's Miss or Mrs. If you're writing to somebody, it shouldn't really matter what is their gender. So if you write to dear Mix Smith, it means there's someone called Smith and we don't know their gender or we don't care. So again, I think in many of the Eastern European countries, we wouldn't like this idea. It's a bit weird, but it's not just being politically correct. So if you see Mr., Ms., Mix, that's what that's about. And the only way that you can then mess this up is by not using someone's proper title. So again, professor or doctor, you need to be careful about that. But for everyone else, Mr., Ms., and Mix. And be careful because Miss has a different meaning in 21st century legal writing. Miss means a minor. So master is a boy, Miss is a girl, Mr. is a man, Ms. is a woman, Mix is anybody, and you're just being polite. Fair enough. If you're not clear, if someone's first name or second name, you just write the whole thing. So for example, my name can be confusing because I'm John James McVeigh. I could even just be John James. So John and James, they could be a first name and a second name, and you have no idea which is which. So if you're not sure, you just say, dear John James, or dear John James McVeigh. It's okay. You write the whole thing. And when you're writing an article or an email from the perspective of sales writing, you need to write in a conversational way. You need to be writing to you. You need to imagine that you're writing to one specific person and you're going to speak to them in plain English, and your writing will reflect your relationship to them in a kind of conversational style. So you should throw in the pronoun you quite often. People like that. It draws people's attention to what you're saying. So you might be interested, you could save, you could see. That's one way to do it. You can take this idea further. You'll see this more in American sales, but this works with Europeans and other people as well, is to use someone's name in the writing. So I gave you the example in my AIDA text that you could throw in my name somewhere there. You could say, James, comma, this law could have significant impact on your business. I have a very strong recognition of the word James because I've seen it for years and years. You have the same with your name. So your name is a very good signpost. So when you're writing, you use you quite a few times. You're speaking to that one person directly. And if you want to really catch their attention, you can use their name, James, well, whatever their name is, yeah? Testimonials and endorsements. You know, you're missing a big opportunity, guys, with your Legal 500 in your chambers. A lot of law firms don't like doing this. Lawyers hate doing it very often. I am not a fan of Legal 500 in chambers at all. So that's another conversation. But one of the good things is that if you have clients who have given you testimonials or endorsements, these are very powerful in sales writing. You might not put this into an email itself, although you could, maybe just one. You have the endorsement, someone with their name and surname, little photograph, so to show that they exist. Again, this isn't commonly done. It's a good idea. But for pitching testimonials and endorsements, if you're going to do a proactive pitch, you send someone an AIDA, you had a meeting with them, you had coffee, and then you send them a pitch, a proactive pitch about what you're proposing. In that case, you might do a small presentation, and that could have some testimonials or endorsements in it, specifically from that industry, from that sector. And remember, the world is very small. It's entirely possible that people will see someone in that testimonial or endorsement who they actually know. If you really wanted to be sly, what you could do is you look at their LinkedIn, you find who do they know, and then you see which of these people that you know could or has a company where you can get an endorsement from them. You can do it the other way around. You can play with this. If you can name drop that you're already worked with someone that they know or someone that they're acquainted with, then there's chance that they would then work with you increases greatly as well. Because it decreases risk. People think, well, they worked with that guy, they're probably okay. And again, for mail shots, especially, but also for your emails, you need to have a CTA, call to action. You really do need to tell them what to do. I would even say in every writing that you have with a client, tell them what to do. Be bossy. You need a lawyer-driven relationship. Because guys, if you do not have a result, this is called the 1 month rule. If you've written an article or you've done an email campaign or a mail shot campaign, and within 1 month you have no results, my prediction is it's never going to happen. This is the 1 month rule. I would say this for everything in business development. Strike while the iron is hot. You don't have results within a month, then you've probably failed. And after 1 month, you could have someone ask the forbidden question, you know, how much did that generate? So how much did you get from that article, from that newsletter, from that mail shot campaign? The 1 month rule is a little bit of an exaggeration. When I was writing stuff and doing different campaigns with Deloitte, sometimes we would get clients, you know, 6 months later or 9 months later, but the probability of conversion drops significantly. You know, if you make a graph of the conversion against time, most of it's going to be coming, you know, within the first, well, within the first few weeks or that month. So, yeah. All right, so what's the next steps? Because I've went a little bit over time into our Q&A time. If you want, write me an IDA and I'll criticize you. I'll give you some feedback and mark it and send it back to you. That's free. If you want the slides, that's cool. I can send it to you. I can send you my book. And then if you want to look into this in a little bit more detail with yourself or your lawyers, we can look at IDA papers and do a consultation. We can look at mail shots. I've written another textbook, another topic called Advanced Sales Writing, and I've written another one just on mail shots. So it's possible to go into these in more detail. And as for my travels, you can see in December, I still have half a dozen different countries I'm going to visit. In January, I got confirmations for Athens and for Hungary. And then in late January to February, I decided to do a Baltic tour. So I'm visiting Warsaw, Vilnius, Riga, Tallinn, and Helsinki. So I do my tour that week. If you're in one of those places and you want to see me, we can have a coffee, we can have a lunch, we can talk. That would be fun. All right, I think that's enough on the lecture side. And I stop sharing. Okay, now I'm back. And so guys, please don't be shy. You can ask some questions or put some comments. Okay, so we have something from Lenka Subenikova. What's she saying? I do not think that in 2022, Dear Sirs includes women. It has actually hidden context as it promotes the infamous stereotype. I will never use it when addressing a group of people, including women. In our law firm, I strongly discourage from using Dear Sirs. Fair enough. You know, if like with anything I say or I promote to you, you take the bits that you like. If you think there's something that wouldn't work in your jurisdiction or could be offensive, then don't do it. Yes, quite simply. If we're uncomfortable with the idea of using Dear Sirs, which I say is actually gender neutral, then don't do it. I think there are two different ways you can be wrong in sales writing, and that's one is to be wrong in a nice way. So to be wrong in a nice way, that might be, I saw this with some of my Ukrainian and Belarusian and Moldovan lawyers, that sometimes the colleagues, they would write something which is overly polite. So we hereby kindly request you at your convenience to send us, nobody speaks like that, no, not even the British, but they're going to get the idea and no one's going to be offended. So I call that the example of being wrong in a nice way. That's okay. What you don't want to do is what Lenka is saying here. You don't want to be wrong in a bad way. You don't want to write something which could potentially annoy someone. So I gave you the example of not having a salutation. James, comma. That can upset or annoy some people. So I would advise not doing it. Even if the Americans do it, don't copy them because your audience is international. Dear sirs, if we don't want to use dear sirs for a group of women or a mixed group, then use dear colleagues or use dear surname, 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 surname. I think that's not a great problem. Okay. So if we have, like, how do I answer this? I say, okay. If we have any other questions, then you can ask. And I see, I don't want to pick on people like I do in my training sessions. But I can mention, I have one very nice Polish law firm that I work with. I shouldn't mention their name because I didn't ask them if I could do that, but I know some of them are on this call just now. And I was in Warsaw, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And I was surprised because this Polish law firm was telling me that they actually got pretty good results from their newsletters. And again, in my experience, when I'm running around the world visiting law firms, I'm saying, no, newsletter is very bad, waste of time, it's spam, it doesn't get responses. Because usually newsletters are done very badly by law firms from a sales perspective. If you ask, what's the return on investment from newsletters? Most law firms have no idea. And they do it because everyone else does it. It's a waste of time and it can actually make a bad reputation. But I was impressed with this Polish law firm. And if any of the colleagues want to throw in some comments while I'm talking about them, they can. Because what these guys did was they actually had pretty well segmented targets. So if you're going to do something like a newsletter, it should be probably you're going to have more success if it's industry focused rather than practice focused. If I'm the director of a company, I don't really care just about employment law or IP law. This is an artificial creation by law firms, lawyers. I care about my industry. So they had very good segmentation, and they had time relevance. They weren't doing just informational writing. They were looking at the legal topics and then analyzing it and then seeing what could they propose. So I thought that was really smart. That I would say in an information economy, your job is not to tell people about the law and the latest changes to the law. Your job or your value is the interpretation and the analysis. What are the business consequences of that law, and to communicate it to the client. So I stood corrected. Yes, thank you, Elisabetta. Elisabetta, I won't even try and say your surname because I'm terrible with Polish surnames. Elżbieta is from this law firm, so you can see this, it's TKP. And she says, yes, our newsletters do work. And yes, it's because they're well targeted. Absolutely, Elżbieta. So it is possible to do something like a newsletter and actually make it work from a sales perspective. Most law firms don't, however. Most law firms make a lot of common mistakes with this. Okay, we have another comment here from Miklos. Miklos is in Budapest, he's in Hungary. So he says, I do legal tech consultancy for lawyers, and my problem is to give as much awareness as I can, since people don't understand what is their interest for technology. So it's very hard to shorten the awareness part and have demonstrate interest. Can I be longer regarding this rule than usual? Thanks, Miklos. No, sorry, Miklos. So guys, I'll explain. Miklos has a really interesting area of activity. So Miklos is a lawyer himself, and he's a partner. He has a small practice in Hungary, and Miklos is really into legal tech. And I feel I can feel the difficulty for Miklos, because Miklos can find solutions which speed up, which offer efficiencies for in-house legal departments or for law firms, like some kind of contract management tools, some partial automation, there are some different cool things that he can offer. And logically, you would think these sound like really, really good ideas. So Miklos, and I help Miklos with this, Miklos pitches to in-house legal counsels of different companies. He pitches to different partners, also sometimes in legal companies as well as commercial entities. And he tries to pitch this. The problem for Miklos is, and this is also true for some of our legal services, it can be a little bit complicated to explain to the non-specialist. So I'm a good example. I am not a specialist in IT or legal tech. I have a very basic understanding, as you can see by how I mess up sometimes even doing these Zoom presentations. And so Miklos has to raise the awareness to people that this exists. He needs to make them interested. He needs to create the desire for them to actually potentially purchase that. Nobody's going to buy this just by sending an email. So he has to meet them. So coming back to your question, Miklos, and you asked me, so I hope you don't mind I'm telling you these thoughts in front of like about almost 100 other colleagues. No. Miklos, you're going to make the same mistake that lawyers do quite often just with legal writing. You're going to try and put in far too much writing, far too much information, far too much detail. You might even throw in a presentation there. And no. I think especially for Miklos, for you Miklos with legal tech, and this applies for us as lawyers as well, the more complicated this is, you need to really translate that into a very simple value proposition. You know, I call this also the babushka rule. Like, again, this is another Russian language one. Babushka means grandmother. You need to be able to explain, Miklos, what is it that you're offering, so that even a grandmother who isn't strong in IT can catch the idea. For example, my mama, my mama is already retired and she's not strong in IT, although she does have an iPad. You need to be able to say to my mama, for example, you know, this is the product, this is what it does, this is the efficiency. And actually, remember, Miklos, forgive me, but I think you're making a mistake. You shouldn't just be trying to make people aware. I think a lot of lawyers and a lot of partners are aware that legal tech solutions exist. The reason they're not buying it isn't because they're not aware of it. It's because they're not convinced it's worth the money. There is conservatism. People are afraid this is going to cost a lot of time to think about, and then to install, and then to buy, and then to use. And I saw this, I can say it, I shouldn't say it, I can say it. When I was in DLA Piper, and also when I was in Deloitte, we had lots of different tech solutions and products and IT systems and databases. Both DLA Piper and both Deloitte Legal are very, very big companies. And the difficulty was, I don't think anyone really knew what on earth we had. And then even if you find what you have, people didn't really understand how to use it. And so you had one group of lawyers doing one thing, one group of tech and financial people doing something else, using something else. So I don't think your problem here is about raising awareness. I think in an IDA pitch, you make them aware and you make them interested, and you keep it as simple as possible. Your objective has to be to get that face-to-face meeting. And then when you have that face-to-face meeting, you really need to translate this legal tech solution into very plain, simple English, simple arguments. And you need to understand, what are the counter arguments? What are people going to be afraid of, Miklos, when they're thinking about making this kind of purchase decision? And then you need to be able to have the answers to those in advance. It's actually quite an interesting problem. So I'm glad that I'm helping you with this, Miklos, and we meet in January in Budapest, and I've got some different ideas. But yeah, your problem here isn't about awareness. Okay, someone else has a question. Okay, I know it's Miklos. Thanks a lot, John James. We'll try to use IDA mindset for sure. Yeah, cool. You can email me, Miklos. I mean, we're going to work on this together anyway. Okay, so we have a question from Andre Muresan. Andre is saying, how does the IDA concept help in getting new clients? They could very well just use the awareness part of the email and go to their internal counsel or external counsel for advice. No, so no, they couldn't if you do proper sales writing. When you do, I'll give you an example. Let me think how to formulate this. We created a legal product, which we thought would be quite interesting. I'm just thinking how not to go into too much detail here because it's kind of confidential. Okay, I'll think of a different example. Okay, the product, the e-commerce health check. This is something we talked about before. We have our IP lawyer and our corporate lawyer and our tax lawyer, and we come together and we created the e-commerce health check, which means that we can come to an e-commerce firm and we can examine their setup from a regulatory compliance, data protection, GDPR perspective, and show what are the risks and exposures because they grew too rapidly during the pandemic, and how can we optimize or centralize what they have. And there could be some potential tax restructuring and some different efficiencies that can come from our examination here. So we could even get in one of the M&A guys and look at this from a structuring perspective potentially. So that's our solution. So let's imagine, Andre, we then identify the largest e-commerce providers in our country, and you're going to go for the chief, the e-commerce manager, the head of e-commerce. You can do a position search. This is very good if you use Sales Navigator rather than Google to find the different people. And in the awareness, you would say, dear so-and-so, that's the salutation. Awareness, as you know, your company, like many others, grew rapidly the last couple of years during the pandemic. However, as you already are probably aware, there are some risks and exposures. So that could get you into a lot of trouble. You then mention, as you perhaps saw in the news, company XYZ got fined something. You know, you find a little negative war story, you put that as a sentence. Interest, therefore, I'd like, so that's the interest, desire. Therefore, I'd like to suggest that we have a chat regarding the e-commerce health check. I'd like to introduce you to our colleague from IP, from corporate, and from tax, since there are some very nice tax savings that can be gained through this kind of product. Let's have a coffee. I can suggest Tuesday at 2 or Friday at 5, which is better. So in this case, Andre, you have done a proactive pitch, a cold pitch, an email pitch to a key decision maker, these e-commerce managers in e-commerce companies, and you've proposed the solution. They can't simply go to their internal counsel or external counsel for advice. I mean, their internal counsel doesn't have expertise in all of the tax aspects. He cannot be an expert also in GDPR and data protection and corporate, and he's never done restructuring in his life. So in internal counsel, this guy is doing the day-to-day activities. He's good at his job, but he can't possibly be as good as 3 or 4 different legal specialists. So he can't do it. Their external counsel, yes, probably they already work with some other legal providers. Probably these other legal providers could do this if they were asked in detail how to do it. However, you're asking that external provider, can you do an e-commerce health check for us? And they say, what's that? What do you mean? You want us to look at this from, you want us to check about data privacy or what? Yeah, so you can put in a few teasers there that your product isn't obvious about what it contains, but you can tell about some of the results. So this would be avoiding the mistake of doing a spoiler, and it would be about doing teasers. However, I did see one firm in Romania last year, which did this, unfortunately, in a very bad way with a similar kind of product, that they did have quite a sophisticated technical presentation, 3 or 4 slides, where they showed the structure and the different stages and how they do this. And then I think if you had a client who had a good legal provider, they could ask the legal provider to also do that or to get some other counter offer. So use spoilers, use teasers, I should say, use teasers and not just spoilers. And that's my response to André. And I would say the most important thing about sales writing, the most valuable element is the heart of the article or the heart of the email is, what are you offering? What is the topic? Yeah. You have to be able to answer that for yourself. Once you have the topic, then you can build your IDA around it. Then you can do your email promoting that product. It's another reason I don't like newsletters usually, because quite often newsletters, and the same lawyers do the same with public speaking, we do informational communication and there's no product. And then it's not clear what the client can actually buy. Sometimes we would see this very silly thing to write at the bottom of an article or an email, which is, please feel free to reach me if you have any questions. Please feel free to reach us if we can be of assistance. You know, you're preaching to the converted. Your client knows that you're good lawyers. Your client probably knows you have corporate lawyers and IP lawyers. Your client just simply isn't convinced that there is something that they should be buying. Maybe you made them aware of something, but they're not really interested in it. And they're not desiring something because there isn't something to desire. You're simply pitching high quality legal advisory, so it's not going to work. So you really need to come back initially to that thought. What could be the product? What can we offer? Another reason, sorry, I can just do my monologue since nobody's asking questions just now. I'll just tell you, what I think. Another reason that I don't like newsletters is they encourage lawyers simply to be market driven. So some law firms, they do a newsletter once a month or once a quarter about any legal changes on their market. So what? And then so do all of your competitors. And then I think if you're going to do an IDA, it would be wonderful if you had a spontaneous UVP, like an e-commerce health check. That doesn't depend on anything happening to changes in the law. It means you have no competitors doing the same thing. So try not to simply be market driven. Okay, we have an email. We have a message now from Serap, from, if I'm not mistaken, from Istanbul. So Serap is saying, hi, John. Nowadays, marketing, business development is almost a very hot topic. Everybody trying to pass the door. And anyone trying to pass the door is shot, basically. Yeah, I mean, that's the difficulty, that your clients or the potential clients are receiving a lot of messages every day. There's lots of spam, lots of newsletters. Many of your legal competitors will be trying to do email campaigns and pitching and creating products, or maybe even mail shot will come back. So, you really need to be ahead of the game and avoid the common mistakes. So yeah, clear, concise, product-based writing, driving your client or potential client to have a meeting with you. Cool. Serap says, so what we are also trying to send, newsletter, trying to be on our client's eyes. I can't always be selling a product. Yeah, I agree with that, Serap. If the only time you're writing to your client is to sell them something, your client is going to get annoyed with you. So you have to have a mix of communication. If what do I do with the law firms I work with? I would, for example, my Polish colleagues, I would pitch the managing partner because I have a good relation with him. I would pitch him once a month with some suggestion on how we can help get better results. But also once a month, I would send him an article I've written. I'd invite him to some webinar. I would tell him about some event. If I'm in Warsaw, I would try and have a coffee or a lunch. So I would be careful to be smart, to nurture that relationship. And it isn't just about selling. It is also about getting to know your client, building the trust, asking them questions. Only if there's needs, then you can suggest something to satisfy the needs. Okay, we're almost out of time. So just this last point from my colleague, Lamco Luen. Okay, you're welcome, Siddharth. So Lamco Luen, if I'm not mistaken, is with us from Malaysia or maybe Singapore, I forget. So Lamco Luen says, hi, John James. If you were to prioritize different marketing tools, techniques, from most effective to least effective, what would it be? My answer, Lamco Luen, is I wouldn't be prioritizing anything in marketing. I am not fond of marketing. You should be doing sales, proactive sales. So again, your marketing colleagues are fine. They're helping with your marketing. It's the sales that you should be doing. You should do the proactive stuff where you go out and you get meetings with prospects. Then Lam Cohen says, that's the same question. Actually, Lam Cohen, there is one document that I created called the business development menu. And this lists everything from pure sales all the way down to pure marketing. And in terms of most effective, I would be saying that you as a partner, you should be focusing on the activities at the top of that spectrum, of that menu. That would be things like email pitching, cross-selling, email campaigns, active referrals. You know, send me an email, Lam Cohen, or anybody, guys, you can do this. Then I can send you this business development menu because I think that that'll answer your question better, what you're asking me. So I say to you, email me. Okay, we have just 2 other comments and then we finish. Okay, Serap says, thank you very much. You're welcome. Okay, Lenka Subenikova, thank you, James, for the hint on being wrong in a nice way. Yes, good to remember not to overdo it. Yeah, I would agree. Okay, guys, I think basically we're out of we're out of time now, and I have to run to the airport. I'm flying to Bulgaria. So if you have any questions or any comments, drop me a line. I love actually hearing from you, and I always answer every single email that I get. If you want a copy of the slides, I can send you. If you want to do an AIDA, send it to me. I'll mark it. I'll send you back. Like Lam Koa Luen, if you're interested in the business development menu, you can send that as well. And I'll email you later next week. I'll send you a reminder about the second broadcast on sales writing. So as usual, hope to see you next Thursday. All right. That was fun. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.